Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. And today is Friday, November 24th, 2017. And as promised and announced earlier in the week, this is the 6th interview that we have for this special week. And we really wanted to highlight the plight of what's happened to one of our previous guests, Melanie Versham, who had been a targeted individual who had had this implants in her body and had suffered through that. And there has been updates to that. There's even been more stranger turns in this whole case. And we also have with us Alfred Lambermont-Weber joining us to help understand and explain what's going on. It's all part of this transhumanist agenda, and we're going to get right into this. So let me welcome our guest. Melanie, welcome back to the GoldFish Report. But I'm sorry under these circumstances, but we're going to try to do what we can to bring awareness to this and bring some help to this. But welcome back.
Thank you, Louisa, and thank you for having me. And I wanted to say this on air. I've seen that it was your birthday this week, so happy birthday.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. It was. Thank you so much. Alfred, we have, of course, Alfred Lambermont-Weber joining us back, a friend of the GoldFish Report. Alfred, as you know, has the exopolitics.com, the News Inside Out site, the author of Exopolitics and the Omniverse, and are distinguished and certainly very happy to see you again, Alfred. Thank you so much, and welcome back to the GoldFish Report.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Nobody was. Oh. No, that's okay. I'm just kidding. Yeah, thank you. Well, Alfred and Melanie, I just want to thank you. You know, Alfred, recently I had seen the interview that you had just done with Melanie and with Catherine about how Melanie had a portion of this implant. If our viewers recall, Melanie was a targeted individual. She went into a clinic, came out, and she had some implants in her that caused torturous pain. And I don't know all the details of this, but it was documented. We've aired it. Alfred's reported on it, and there was a development on that. And let me ask Melanie to first go into what happened with this implant, and where are we with that right now?
Yeah, so that there was indeed a foreign body removed from my throat, and I had since various years pain and choking feeling, and there was a little pieces coming out of my skin that were shiny, that were observed by various people. Also my physiotherapist, she made a written declaration that when she was massaging my scar of the operation, there was still these little shiny pieces coming out. So I had the symptoms for a year, years, and it was getting worse and worse. I felt more and more choked, and the pain was just getting unbelievable. And I had seen various doctors. Nobody, because this technology, you see, is not visible on the CT scans or on the MRIs or any detection methods that we have commonly in our hospitals. So you couldn't see it, but there was definitely a lump under my skin. And finally I found a surgeon. He said, okay, well, I can't see anything on the CT scan, but there's definitely something here. So, okay, I think it's a cyst, on your thyroid. I'm going to remove it. And when he removed it, when I woke up, I asked him what it was, and he said, "Well, it's definitely not a cyst, not a kyst." So I don't know what it is. I sent it to the lab, and I got it from this lab because they also couldn't really identify it. They just gave the measurements, and it was quite a big piece. And with Catherine's help, Dr. Catherine Horton, who's a physicist, we brought to a lab in Switzerland that is specialized in all these analysis that are biotechnology, nanotechnology. And to our surprise, or not so much of a surprise, when the results came back, it showed clearly that it was not biological, that it was made out of titanium fibers, various metals, aluminium, chromium, I think. There were various metals and big blocks of iron. So that was quite interesting. And of course, since this piece has been removed, I feel much better.
Wonderful.
And
is it so they're not, it's not, you don't have this choking feeling any longer, and so
yeah,
it's
that
kind of
is
disrupted
gone.
whatever that was. It kind of, well, thank God for that. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe what you were going through and how difficult that must have been, just trying to, you know, not only just function with that, but trying to explain that it even existed when it doesn't show up on scans, and the difficulty. Do you have a picture, Alfred, do you have one of the images? Because I remember you shared it in your other interview. Just for our guests, if is there any way you guys can pull that up, just so our viewers can get an idea of of what we're talking about. And so how soon after that, and really part of the story that we're talking about today is that that good news, you know, led to more good news, and Melanie became pregnant and had a baby. And then, of course, the shocking twist of what happened after she had the baby, they actually ended up taking her baby. And so this is the part we're going to get to. It's heartbreaking, just heartbreaking. And we're going to try to put this and help people understand it, and also maybe help Melanie through this. So how soon after that then did you become pregnant, and when did they find out that you actually, you know, what was the reason that they actually took the baby, and, you know, or how did the pregnancy go, and all of that stuff? So fill us in on that if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I fell pregnant very shortly after that. So the piece was removed on the 1st of February of this year. And I fell pregnant the same month, so in February, just after it was removed.
Wow. Well,
and so so pregnancy went well, you know, all went fine. So no special problems during the pregnancy. And
when did you give birth?
my
What was the
gynecologist
day?
always said, you know, I gave birth, and here we can see the piece. And what I would like to say to this is the photo was taken where it was placed under the microscope in Switzerland, where they did a spectroscopy by X-ray spectroscopy on it.
Okay.
So to show the exact composition of this piece. And I mean, to tell you the truth, this is actually only half of the piece, because the first lab sliced it to better examine it, I guess.
Oh, right, of course.
So so you can see it's not small. I have the measurement. It was 3.5 centimeters times 1.5 centimeters times 1.5 centimeters. So this was not a small piece. And I mean, I could definitely feel it in my throat. That there was like a foreign body, and I felt really strangulated more and more. So, and it had also incurved my hyoid bone, which is quite a big bone in the U form that you have in your throat. And I had another operation before, and the doctors always asked me if I had been victim of domestic violence or so, because this bone normally does not, you know, incurve itself like this. But,
I see.
unless there's a considerable amount of pressure exerted on the bone. So so this is the piece. And so I all finished well, I thought, when it was removed. And shortly after this, indeed, I got pregnant, and had a good pregnancy. My gynecologist said, well, you know, it's really great, because at your age, it was not sure at all that it would work with the pregnancy, but it did. And so I was pregnant with my second child, and gave birth to my wonderful little baby daughter, Amethyst, on the 18th of October. Here in one of the biggest university clinics here in Brussels. The hospital that is called Erasmus in German or in Flemish. This is...
and then what happened? I mean, what really happened? This kind of like this new twist of things. Like, you had all this great news, you finally started to live without this, you had this, just couldn't have been better. And it's like, whoa, what on earth just happened? Please.
Yeah, all went well. I mean, it was a planned C-section, so
Uh-huh.
all went well, and C-section went well, and I was recovering from the anesthesia.
Mhm.
Uh, and Catherine Horton, who was here anyway in Brussels for some time, because we're also working with one of the major universities here in Brussels on a measurement project, for the victims.
Mhm.
So what she was here, let's say on INACCURATE business, which is the not-for-profit association that I founded here in Brussels. And as she was here anyway, and told me, well, it's better if you bring somebody to the birth. It's, not don't come alone. We had indeed agreed that she would stay a little longer and give me a hand, so to speak,
Okay.
afterwards.
Mhm.
So everything went well. The C-section went well. The birth went well. Baby, healthy. Everything's fine. And I was recovering from the anesthesia. So this was just after the C-section. And Catherine was holding the baby. That's the last I remember. And a midwife came to my bed, and she asked me if she could give a vitamin K injection to the baby. She said all babies get this, and I was like, falling in and out of sleep. Basically, I was just really recovering from the anesthesia.
Yeah, like
And
that's
I
not
said,
informed consent. I mean, you're not even cognizant, you're
I
asking
was
Alfred, like, does that conform consent, Alfred? You're gonna take somebody that's under anesthesia and ask them to consent to something? I mean, what do you think about that,
yeah,
Alfred?
but
All right, go
Well,
ahead, finish. Well, go ahead, Alfred.
yeah,
Let him comment on that, because that just seems
yeah.
remarkable.
Well, and not only that, as you'll see as um, Melanie starts to recount this sequence of events, um, uh, including Dr. Catherine Horton and a number of the eyewitnesses have gone together and reconstructed a scene of what occurred among the staff and the actions, so that it does appear that there was a coordinated scenario that was constructed around false diagnoses and fraudulent clinical moves by the staff. And I say this not only as a war crimes judge and as an attorney, but also I was an administrator of a federally qualified healthcare center for a number of years in the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, where I administered 20 physicians, 120 nurses, and 90,000 patient encounters a year. And what's more, I have a certificate from the Harvard School of Public Health. So I am cognizant of how community health centers work and how health administration works in general, to where I can make an accepted evidentiary and judicial, as well as medical administration, judgment of what is an authentic medical and nursing administration, a postpartum diagnosis, and what is fraudulent in aid of what is an apparent criminal organization that has infiltrated the hospitals for purposes of kidnapping children from vulnerable mothers. Now, I just wanted to front load that and say that at the beginning to kind of break the suspense, but that is a evidentiary conclusion that we have reached at News Inside Out on the basis of the many witnesses, direct witnesses that we've interviewed and that we have gathered. So I just wanted to say that up front.
Oh, thank you, Alfred. Well, this means we're taking a turn now, Melanie. So something happened. They took the baby. Why did they take the baby? What happened after this? They asked you to have this injection. If they could
she
give the
asked
baby
me
injection,
if
and then
she could give her this injection, and
yeah.
I said, well, is it not possible? This is the last I remember. And then we come to what happened next, which is like, I mean, it was totally shocking. And I asked her if it's not possible to give her this, rather than giving her an injection, if it's not possible to give her this vitamin K by mouse, you know. And she said, well, you can, but then you have to give it her regularly, you have to continue at home, and once she's going to be sick or so, you have to give a little antibiotic or whatever it is. She will not like the taste, and so I do it here once, and then it's done. And I said to Catherine, are you going with her? And she said yes. So I said, okay, in this case, I authorize it once. Okay. So the two ladies go to a room next door. And there, I cannot tell you what happened because I was not present. And on top of it, I was really like falling in and out of conscience.
Right.
And but I can only tell you what Catherine told me. She said that she was asked various times before the operation already. She's just recently told me, I wasn't aware. And also, again, whilst they were in the room, you know, and the midwife was taking care of my baby, various times who she was, why she was here, who she was in, you know, in relation to me, and why she was here when she was not even living in Belgium, but she came from Switzerland. And so Catherine apparently started to explain what we were doing, what we were working on, that we're basically working together since two years with this human rights organization that I and our other colleagues have founded, that provide victims of non-consensual experimentation with implant technology, with the proof of the crimes committed against them. And yeah, so she did not really, I think, suspect that the turn of events that it would later take.
Right.
She gave an honest answer. She just explained why she was here.
Yeah.
And apparently this midwife, who later identified as Hélène, she asked her, well, what are these implants? Why would anybody put that into people? You know. And so Catherine explained that this is military technology. It's non-consensual experimentation. You know, it's been going on for quite a while, and this is all I know. And I was then taken up to my room with my baby. I had arranged everything. My health insurance was going to cover 100% of the costs, and you know, a single room and everything. So it was quite nice. We were taken up, and I had a really, really nice night with my baby. I was breastfeeding her right away. It worked. I was really, really happy. I was like on cloud 7, so to speak, that everything had worked so well.
I understand.
And it's the next day, 19th of October, when you know, things really suddenly turned, and it was quite a horror movie. I must say that unfortunately it's not a movie. It's reality. What has developed then? I had the gynecologist who had operated me come into my room and say, well, you know, Ms. Ritchen, I'm very concerned. We were very concerned because there was a conversation that has been reported to me that your friend had last night with the midwife that was there during your birth. And that is very concerning to us. And I've asked a psychiatrist to come around and you know, and have a conversation with you. And I said, well, what conversation? You know, it's like holding my baby, and she said, well, there was things revealed to us that is of concerning nature. That we think, you know, is of concern, and I said, well, I don't know what was talked because I was not with them in the room.
Sure.
And she said, well, maybe it's nothing, but I've asked the psychiatrist to come, and and she left. And sure enough, there a few minutes later, a lady comes in, and she introduces herself as a psychiatrist, and we have all the names. And she asked me a couple of questions, saying, well, you know, we have heard very worrying words and about some foreign body that has been removed from your throat that was strangulating you. What is this about? And your friend told us all this. And And I said, oh, yeah, that is true, that I can confirm. There was indeed, I had various years, how do you say, this strangulating feeling, and it was hurting me. And there was indeed a body removed from my throat. You can see the scar here.
Yeah.
And we had that analyzed in a you know, and the surgeon thought it was a cyst and a cyst, and it was not a cyst. And we had it analyzed in a specialized laboratory in Switzerland, and it showed its composition. It's you know, was made of titanium fibers and various metals. So I can confirm that. And then she said, well, you know, there were other things regarding implants and so on. So what is this association you're working with, and why did you found this association, and it's you that founded that? And so I explained, you know,
Whoa.
the same, yeah.
Wait, at this point, Melanie, were you starting to realize, were your senses, were you starting to say something's not right here? Is that,
Yeah,
at what point did you start saying this isn't going the way it should?
Well, when she started about this association, why did we need to find this association, what this was all about, and so I started really to, yeah, I tried to stick to the facts. This is what we're doing. It's a registered not-for-profit association. You know, it is totally legal, registered under Belgian law with the Tribunal of Commerce in Belgium. This is what we're doing, and I also told her about this collaboration that we're doing with one of the major universities here in Belgium, which should indicate to her that what I was saying was not delusional. And she listened to this, and she said, well, you will certainly understand that this seems all very strange, and this seems delusional here, you know. I must say. And what I then reproach is, okay, I mean, I can understand maybe a person that never heard about such things, about technologies or so, right, that it would seem a little odd. And I said, okay, I understand if you've never heard of this, that might surprise you, or, you know, come or seem a little strange. But if you want to, I have my computer here. I have the medical reports of this piece that was removed from my throat. I have the analysis of the Swiss laboratory, and I have the report of the university we're working with, that we're doing these tests with, and all this is here, all this is available. If you want to have a look, you know, you can. And she said, well, you know, okay, well, could you put this on a USB stick and have a look for me, give it to the staff, and I will have a look. I said, okay, no problem. But she didn't leave me the time to do that. She said, well, I have heard enough now. Other people, don't be surprised if other people will come and see you. And she left. And sure enough, a few minutes later, there were 3 women that came in that identified them as pedopsychiatrists. And in the meantime, there was a story developing. A nurse came in, and she looked at my baby and she said, well, you know, we think that she has changed color. You know, we think that she has jaundice. We need to take her away. We need to have a pediatrician look at her, you know. And I looked at my baby, and I didn't think at all that she had changed color. She looked, you know, just as healthy as after the birth, and I didn't see any color change in her. I didn't find her particularly yellow. And I said to her, well, I don't know, to me, she looks fine. She doesn't seem to have changed color. And she said, well, you know, maybe she's all right, but we better take her. And we would like to have a doctor see her. And if she's fine, don't worry, we'll bring her back. And well, I said, well, I certainly hope so, you know, that you bring her back. I mean, and so she took the baby. But, you know, I really didn't think as a mother that she had changed color. But then if a medical staff insists and said, well, we just would like to have a check, I also didn't say, well, no, I won't have it checked, you know. So she took the baby, and I had not a good feeling about this.
You know, I'm sorry, Melanie, you wouldn't have been able to win either way. Because if you said no, then they would have said to you, well, you're neglecting the baby. It just looked like, no matter what you said, they probably were going to, if you refuse to have the baby, then you're going to be like, questioning the authority of, so what position did you really have to take there, But Alfred's going to comment on these things in a minute, but go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
Like a
You didn't really have a choice. Yeah, your computer freezes a little bit too, just so you know. But keep going. It's okay. So
Sorry, yeah.
I know the connection.
Okay, so she takes the baby, and and then the three women come in, and they say that they're pedopsychiatrists. And that's when it went really wrong, I mean, already the first conversation was this psychiatrist who, said, oh, that sounds all delusional. And I said, well, you can have a look at all the medical reports, check if what I'm saying is true, And then these three women came in, and they said to me, well, you have to be hospitalized in psychiatry. So there are two ways of doing this. Either you go voluntarily on a voluntary basis, and that means that,
I saw that coming.
Yeah, we take you to another hospital tomorrow, and you're going to travel with a nurse and the baby on you, but the nurse beside you. Or you refuse, and then we get a warrant from the judge, and basically we lock you up. And this
holy cow, what?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
That's how it was said.
And this
is for your own protection.
Holy cow.
And the other how do you say, one of them of whom I could take a picture very quickly, she immediately said, and you will have to take medication for your anxiety because you seem very, full of anxiety.
Oh, you're kidding. Somebody is like shaking you down and interrogating you and questioning you, and but you're anxious and that's not healthy. I mean, this is crazy, Alfred. This is crazy. Oh my God. All right.
It was
go ahead.
really crazy.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if you're putting it to me like this way, I would rather go voluntarily than not voluntarily, but it's not really voluntarily, is it? It's
right. So
I feel I'm being coerced here, but so she said, okay, so you're opting for the voluntary way, so we're going to organize this right away and come back to you. And they all leave. And at that point, I was getting very worried. And Catherine and another friend who's called George, they're both members of INACCURATE. They had just gone out, doing some shopping or, so. And Catherine actually, I don't know if she mentioned this in the interview with Alfred, she was the accompanying person. So we had been told that the accompanying person, she can also sleep. There was a sofa bed there in the room. Mm-hmm. You can also sleep there, and she has access for 24 hours. She just has to say, I'm the accompanying person of Mrs. So-and-so, and she can stay there. Mm-hmm. And so I texted her and I said, well, or I called her and I said, what, I don't know what the hell is going on here. They want to put me in psychiatry because of a conversation that you had yesterday with the midwife.
Right. Oh, gee.
Yeah. What have you said to her? Can you please come back? Because, this is going all very wrong. Yeah.
Right.
And she said, what? Wow. Okay. We're coming back right away. So Catherine and George are on their way back. And you must say that this hospital is on the other side of the city where I'm living from. So it's really not next door, so it took them a while with the traffic and so to come back, but they came as quickly as they could. And then this, according to Catherine, she met the chief gynecologist on the floor. And she said, well, doctor, I've just heard from Melanie that you want to put her in psychiatry. What is this about?
Right.
And according to Catherine, the chief gynecologist replied, oh, no, we don't want to put her in psychiatry. She herself asked for it. And she said, and she said that this is the best for everybody, for her and the baby. So if I had said, hello, I want to be, put in psychiatry because I think it's the best for me and my baby. So Catherine was like, wow. So she said, well,
Melanie, at that point, did you not think of getting your phone out and recording any subsequent conversations
well,
that you were going to have? I'm just wondering, because I know you're like, who's thinking, right? But yeah.
Well, in this conversation, I wasn't present. That was on the floor. Okay.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So about this, Catherine and the other friend, George, who were the witnesses. And
Okay.
Catherine spoke with the chief gynecologist. So Catherine said, okay, hang on a minute. Would you please accompany me to Miss Richardson's room? And I'm going to ask her the question if this is really what happened, because I would be very surprised if she had, asked to be put in psychiatry. I mean, this is so. Indeed, this woman came with Catherine, and but there were also another psychiatrist who came with me, with her in the room. There was this one of the pedopsychiatrists who had seen me earlier. There were two nurses. There were Catherine and George, and there were quite a lot of people that suddenly, showed up in my room.
Yeah.
And I, before all this happened, I had called a lawyer that I knew, that had taken care of for me for another affair, which I have won, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I had asked her, this is what they want to do. Is this even legal? This is what happened. And she said, be sure to take down all of the names of all the psychiatrists who were involved in this decision, who took this decision. So I told Catherine. So when all of these people arrived in my room, Catherine just did what the lawyers had told me. She told us, she asked them all for their names. So they were giving their names, and Catherine wrote them down. And she asked me if I had asked to be put in psychiatry, and I said, no, of course not. They came in and they said, we can either do this on a voluntary basis, or we get a warrant from a judge to do that. So, but I have not asked myself. So they said, oh, so you're not going voluntary anymore. And when Catherine asked the names, the pedopsychiatrist who sat there said, oh, you're asking for our names. Now you're getting really threatening. Well, we don't even have to listen to this. We'll call the police right away.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How awful. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't even believe
absolutely awful.
Wow.
So, and then they said to George, it was 7:30 by then. They said to George, well, you have to go, sir, because the visiting hours are over. And even George, who had actually the actual piece that had been removed from my throat, he had it with him because I had given it to him whilst I was, in hospital. He had kept it for me, and he also said, "Well, if you don't believe her, I have the actual piece, So if you want to look at this." And I had offered again to look at the medical reports, and they didn't want to see the piece. And the psychiatrist said, who was really this young man, he said, we have all the names, by the way. He said, no, I'm not looking at any medical reports. We'll call the police. This is for your own protection. And of course, my daughter hadn't come back by then. So they removed George, saying, well, the visiting hours are over, you go. So he had to go. And then they said to Catherine, and you also go. And she said, what do you mean? I'm the accompanying person. I've got access 24 hours around the clock,
Right.
And they said, no, the rules have changed because Madam does not have her child anymore with her. So there's no need for you to stay here. So the same visiting hours apply. You go.
Oh my goodness.
So removing the witnesses. So,
this is bad. This is bad, right?
Yeah, and then, Catherine is rather, she's quite a slim and tender person. So how do you say? She's not really like a, bodybuilder. Or they called 4 bodyguards of the security to make sure to escort her out of the hospital.
Oh, Alfred, this is unbelievable, Alfred. I can't even believe what I'm hearing. This is what what an unbelievable, this is kidnapping. This is
Yeah,
absolutely,
she was
Yeah,
removed by
well,
security.
this is an operation of a this is an operation of an entity, or we call it the baby kidnap operation, that exists and has embedded itself in hospitals throughout the world, that goes into operation at the time of birth, and that targets, and I'm quoting the research of the Minister of Child Rights of a global nation that now has gotten involved in Melanie's case. And I have here a statement from the minister herself, that she has submitted in Melanie's case, that I can read. It's very brief, but that addresses the rights of the child. And in this case, the rights of the child, of baby Amethyst, have been deeply violated, as have been the rights of the mother. And countervailing to this, we have an operating, deeply criminal, however, it's an instrument of the transhumanist agenda, which I know that you've been covering it and you're familiar with it, that has come in to various points in the family structure, either at childbirth or during the custody award system, or during other points at which the state can intervene and dispose of children. And this is the apparatus that exists in hospitals to take away possession of children from mothers immediately after birth, at which they're most vulnerable. And then they are charged with handing off the baby to very profitable industries, one of which is the foster parent industry. Belgium, of course, and we won't even go there as far as thought, but Belgium is one of the pedophile capitals of the world.
indeed.
I can attest to that through personal experience of one of the witnesses, because in 1968, because I had a Fulbright scholarship in Uruguay, I went to visit my friend who had a Rotary scholarship in Rio de Janeiro during Carnival, and there, through happenstance, the Princess of Paris, the heir to the Bourbons, had brought over a flight, a full airplane of the producers of the film Black Orpheus. It's an award-winning film. And so we happened to meet each other because of all this stuff. And the Princess of Paris asked me to visit her in Paris when I went there. And that struck in my mind, because everybody came up and said, "Oh, the Princess of Paris," and it was like one of these fairy tale moments. Years later, when, as a journalist, we began to investigate the Kingdom of Belgium, we discovered that the Princess of Paris had been betrothed to the King of Belgium, became the Queen of Belgium. And when a lot of these scandals broke, the Queen of Belgium made admissions against interest in the press and said, "Oh yes, my husband had these problems of sexuality with young children." And she admitted it. And I said, "Oh my gosh, she's the person that I met in Brazil all of these years ago. So she's a real person. And she actually said these things." So we know, I mean, that's hearsay, but I'm just saying that I'm a witness to that's a real person.
Yeah.
And here in Belgium, nobody can figure out why Melanie Vricham can't get a pro bono lawyer in Brussels for a case where, I mean, it's open and shut. And Melanie's nonprofit organization has an ongoing case where among the defendants there are the chief of police of Brussels, who on the record has committed perjury. And I've submitted an affidavit in that case. And many international observers who have seen that case have said that in their estimation, where they live, there would be no problem getting a pro bono lawyer. And yet it's impossible to find a pro bono lawyer to represent baby Amethyst and Melanie. And nobody can figure this out. And I'm talking people who are very cognizant. And so we're up against an international criminal organization that has deployed itself in the hospitals of the world to intervene at the moment, using the legal structures to intervene at the moment of birth, to intervene using the children's aid societies and the various adoption, foster parent and adoption and other organizations, then to come in custody proceedings, in adoption proceedings, in child welfare proceedings, to begin to use a perversion of justice.
Absolutely.
And to pervert all of these institutions in the favor of the child trafficking industry.
Right.
And so that's the sum and substance of it here.
Right.
The only thing that I can figure out is that in Belgium, the legal industry must be under such a threat from the state against representing pro bono. I have one example, and then I'll let go of the talking stick. But there's been, Melanie Vricham has almost 10 years of experience that we've been covering her case. She was being aided by a member of parliament who, one of the most distinguished members of parliament, who was head of an organization called Debout les Belges, which was like an organization that's for the Belgian people. And he stood up in the middle of parliament and said, these are the pedophiles in parliament and in the government, etc. And one, under international law and Belgian law, has legal protection when you make statements like that on the floor of parliament against any sort of legal retaliation. Well, he was criminally indicted by the state. He was arrested, I believe. He was tried in camera, which means that they shut down the courthouse, they shut down the courtroom, they tried him, they put him in jail. He had to flee to France, and they effectively terminated his political career. And that is an internationally known and respected member of parliament. So you're dealing with the center. You have here the Vatican, you have the Vatican, you have Buckingham Palace, you have Queen of the Netherlands, you have the King of Belgium, and those are like the four, and then you have the CIA, and Brussels is the headquarters of NATO. They have all direct dealings with, and I'm just going to say it, another species on the planet that whose diet includes human children. Well, there, I said it. Now, and that the world signed a treaty with, and so all the governments, that's what they do. And since 1954, all the governments on the planet, with the exception of a few honest brokers,
Right.
I'm just going to say the truth, but Vladimir Putin will not put up with this nonsense.
Well, I don't think President Trump is either. I mean, he's, draining the swamp. We have over 2,000 indictments thus far that are sealed. Many are, regarding pedophilia, child trafficking, and also the media cover-up of all of these things. It still remains to be seen, but we see the low-hanging fruit being taken down in Hollywood. We see everyone from everyone is talking on social media, is talking about, and I've seen many reports that, you've seen the reports of the ankle bracelets on Hillary Clinton, on John Podesta, on John McCain, rather is what I meant to say. We think that Tony Podesta has already been arrested. That's been reported and confirmed through Jim Fetzer, through our POTUS reports that we've been doing. So it is a fact what you're saying, Alfred. It's a sad fact. It's a very hard pill for people to swallow, that in fact there is this organized effort. And let me tell you, when they come down with the full power of a state or country, you are it's like a black hole. It's you really, unless you have money to outspend them, you are in a big fight. And I do have personal firsthand knowledge with this myself, and I'm not going to go into those details, but it is absolutely horrible. It's so horrible that people can't handle the truth of it. That's how horrible it is, that they can't and they don't want to believe their governments are actually doing this and engaging in this kind of conduct, because they can't handle why they're doing it. So that's, the reason is too difficult. And Liz Crokin, who is a great investigative journalist, we have Seymour, Seaman, what's his first name, from used to be the reporter at the was it the Washington Post or the Guardian? These reporters are out there, John Miranda, they're out there, Cernovich, and they're talking about all this whole pedogate, the whole Hollywood, the Pizzagate. This is real, and this is, unfortunately, here we have, a situation where, now at least we're getting attention to it. Can you imagine? And what you said, Alfred, was absolutely right. And then I'm going to go back to Melanie so you can give us a little bit more detail. But the how it's so insidious. I mean, just how they teamed up against her, and then they threatened her, and then they tried to manipulate her, what she said. This is look, I'm telling you, humans, if we don't bond together and stop this, they're going to take every one of us. We have to realize and accept that there is and I'm going to quote Benjamin Fulford on this, there is an anti-life force on this planet. And they are going to, there's a depopulation agenda. We've talked about this, Georgia Guidestones. It's really in public, and they have to do it in public because that's how they operate. They're Luciferians, and this is what they require to do the dark black magic that they do. So they're not even hiding it anymore. But I'll tell you, this is very hard for people to understand. And sadly, Melanie, you were involved in litigation that involved the people who, that were, you perhaps were already, had a name in the system. And I don't know, all the reasons why they flagged you. But of course, Alfred pointed out how vulnerable. You weren't there with a husband. You weren't there. I don't know, how they flagged you as vulnerable, or if your name was just in there, in their system. And this was the design. And, because why were they even asking Dr. Horton those questions to begin with? It's none of their business what she's doing there. Do you know what I mean? So it looked like they were fishing, Alfred. Is that really, do you think that was they were just fishing, or they were setting her up?
Well, could I say this, that And I just want to say this, is that hospitals are weaponized arenas. And the medical industry, the modern medical industry, which was developed by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, are weaponized industries. And you can look at, you know, many of the allopathic medicines that were developed by the Rockefeller University Medical Science, ranging from chemotherapy on, as weaponized medicine from that point of view. And there's an ongoing debate there, okay? And I speak as a person who has administered medical institutions and have a certificate from the Harvard School of Public Health.
Right.
Okay, now add to that that babies are especially targeted by the transhumanist agenda, and that's kind of a label, transhumanist agenda. There's many layers in that.
Right.
Add to the fact that Melanie is one of the champions and leaders of the anti-transhumanist pro-human forces.
Right.
She is a founder and president of INACCURATE, which she can tell you what that acronym stands for. And she can take you to the website where she's asking, there's crowdfunding there that you can contribute to the legal funds to free baby Amethyst. They're asking for 2,500 euros. The lawyers are, because they don't have pro bono in Belgium. I think it's because they're threatening the lawyers. Any lawyer who goes there trying to shut down this baby kidnap industry, whether it's for fosters or pedo, they're going to destroy that lawyer, because there's no country in the world where lawyers can't say, well, I'm going to go into this pro bono.
Right.
Okay, number one. And not only that, her institute had an ongoing lawsuit with evidence. You all have seen that was funded with DARPA, under a DARPA contract, manufactured by one of the leading companies. Who was head of DARPA? It was Barack Obama's, the person who went to Mars with Barack Obama, Regina Dugan. It was, I mean, DARPA invented the internet. DARPA is the partner of, DARPA started the time travel program. DARPA has been the partner, you know, it's the glass half empty, glass half full. It's been the partner of the PPAI, which is the predatory, pathogenic, sentient, invading artificial intelligence.
Right.
DARPA is, I mean, it's doing stuff that will just make your head swim. It is absolutely predatory. It is a living, walking war criminal, DARPA is, on this planet.
Well, you know, it just seems like this medical industry, as you said, weaponized medicine. It is predatory. It's predatory medicine is what it's called, is what we're seeing here. Let me just go back to Melanie for a moment, Alfred. Thank you. I mean, this is just, it's so much to talk about. It's just amazing. And so then at what point, let me go back. There's just so many issues, and Alfred knows this. I have personal experience with this. This is why, you know, we're really interjecting, and I'm sorry to do that, but we're kind of taking it apart a little bit, right, Alfred, as we're going along. And so, Melanie, so they want to transfer you to psychiatry. You're on the phone, your friend, they're removing you, and then what happens, and then where are things right now presently?
Well, they removed all the witnesses, as I said, and they called the security guards to do that. And very shortly after that, you know, two police officers come in, and I was on the phone with Catherine at that moment. And I said, well, I've just two police officers now in my room. And they told me to, not the police, the psychiatrist, the doctors told me to clear out all my stuff because I would be transferred to another hospital. So, you know, I mean, 24 hours, not even after the C-section,
Oh my God.
I had to, you know, all of the my clothes and all of the baby things that I had just unpacked the day before. I had to pack everything, and so I was ready when the police officers came. And so the police officers came, and they said, well, Catherine asked to speak to them, and she asked them, why are you here? And they said, well, we're here for a legal procedure, you know. And she took his name. Well, I also took his name down, and she even took his register number. I mean, the, you know, the
Right.
his yeah, his number on his badge, and so we have all this. And he starts to talk to me a little bit, saying, well, you know, what's going on, ma'am? And, you know, and I said, well, you know, this and this has happened. And, well, they told me that they wanted to transfer me to psychiatry, and that I would, if I wasn't going to go voluntarily, they would call you and, you know, get a warrant from a judge. And I saw this police officer like thinking, you know, and he said, well, could you show me these medical reports, madam? And I said, sure, yeah. I offered this to the doctor, but he didn't want to see them. And he said, well, I would like to see them. So, so I had my computer there, and I showed him, you know, the medical report from the surgeon with this black piece that had been removed. And then I showed him the quickly the composition that we, you know from the lab. And he looked at it, and he said, doctor, could you come here a moment? So the psychiatrist came back, and he was obviously looked very aggravated that, you know, he was called back by the police officer. And he said, well, doctor, I think you should see that. You know? And he looked at the screen like for 2 seconds, you know, where it says piece removed and so on. And he looked and he said, well, anyway, now everything's arranged. You know, she's going to Bergman, which is another big hospital in Brussels, because when they put you in psychiatry, they need to get a second opinion from a second psychiatrist in another hospital. That's obviously the procedures. So it had all been arranged. So I left with the police with all my stuff, and I went to Bergman, where I saw another African psychiatrist. And at that time, it was rather late. So I think it was about midnight when we were, you know, sat in a little room, and this psychiatrist asked me again a few questions and to tell him what had happened. And so, yeah, well, we had this conversation. And I also to him, I said, well, you know, if you want to see, these are, I have my computer with me. These are the medical reports. And he looked at it. He looked at it, really. So, and I saw him like thinking, and he said, you know, madam, I think you're going to go back to the maternity ward.
Good.
So,
yeah.
And I'm going to organize this transfer tomorrow. So, but you're going back to Erasmus, but in the maternity ward. But I'll just have to step out, do a couple of phone calls, I'll come back, you know. So I said, okay. So at that point, I still had my phone, and I still had Skype on it. So I called Catherine, and so she could see me sit in this room, you know, and it was, you know, almost 2 o'clock in the morning then. So, you know, and after 24 hours after the C-section, was no painkillers or nothing, you know. So, and I told her, well, you know, we saw each other via Skype, and I said, well, no, the hell, God knows what's going on here now. They're saying that they're going to transfer me back to the maternity ward. And Catherine was like, oh, wow, and where are you there? And oh my God, it's so late. And I said, well, I'm here in Hospital Bergman, you know. I've just seen the psychiatrist, and he said he's going to transfer me back to the maternity ward. Well, so she was like, wow, man, what the heck, what's going on? So she said, okay, well, you know, speak to you later or tomorrow. So I said, okay. So the psychiatrist comes back, and he said, well, madam, it's out of my hands. It's the Nixon directive, and that's the legal, the law that can actually authorize them to put you in psychiatry has already been made positive. So, you know, you're going back to go to hospital Rasmus, but you're going in the psychiatric ward. So it
Oh, for
seems
goodness
like
sakes.
somebody had already, you know, taken the decision over his head, so to speak.
Right.
Because when he left me, he said, "You're going to go back to the maternity ward," and he said, "It's out of my hands now. It's already been done." So, so I think he wrote then also a diagnosis of delusion disorder, paranoid delusions. You know, but that's not what he had said to me when we talked. So he said, "Well, anyway, I can't organize this transfer tonight because it's already 2 o'clock in the morning. It's too late. So what we're going to do, you're going to sleep here, and I'll organize this tomorrow, transfer tomorrow in the morning." So I was locked up in a room without even a bathroom, you know, with a camera on me, where I had to, you know, how do you say, well, put a, you know, a nightgown on in front of the guard that was watching. And normally there was only like this kind of bunk beds there where they strap people down, you know. So, well, I mean, me, they didn't strap me down, but I mean, this kind of room. And he said, "Well, if you have to go to the bathroom, there's a red button here you have to call, and there's somebody gonna come and accompany you, you know." So, which is also what happens. And if I had to call, it took a really long time to answer me. This is like a round window, like it's basically an isolation cabin. So I spent the night there, and in the morning, indeed, there was came an ambulance, and I was transferred. And I was in the ambulance, and I talked to this, you know, the guy in the ambulance, and paramedic, and he said, "Well, you know, what's going on, madam?" And and I told him what had happened, and he said, "What?" And this is only based on a conversation of your friend that told that this piece was removed from your throat, and all this procedure. This seems mad.
It is.
And
mad.
I know his name is Jamal, so I remember.
Oh
He said, I've never heard something like that. So when we arrived at Erasmus, we arrived also almost down in a basement or so, or like where the isolation cells are. And I heard that he spoke to the nurse that was, you know, doing my registration, and he said, "Well, I mean, have you ever heard this? Madam has been, you know, a piece has removed from her throat. Her friend told this, and they put her in psychiatry. And that, I mean, what is this, you know?" Exactly. And so they put me in a room, in total isolation. So there was a toilet in there with just a mattress on the floor, and nothing, no room, nothing, no bell. Totally isolation cell for the, you know, really agitated people that, you know. And I stayed there for 3 or 4 hours as well. And then finally later, this psychiatrist or pedopsychiatrist that had seen me, that came in, that was part of the 3 that had came in, and she said, "Well, you know," I was like, obviously on the floor because I was waiting on the mattress, onto the mattress. So I said, "Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to try to rest a bit, you know." So she came in and she stood there, and I was sitting on the mattress, and she said, "Well, you know, now you're hospitalized in psychiatry, you know, was this even worth it? You know, you should have gone voluntarily." And so then she told me, "Well, you know, we're looking for a bed for you, and we're organizing your transfer, but it's gonna take some time, you know, somebody's gonna come and pick you up." Then, okay, after a time, indeed, they came and they took me up to the 9th floor, which is a psychiatric unit, and with really, really heavy pathologists,
psychopathologist,
yeah, psychopathologist.
Yes.
Pathologies, yeah.
Yes.
That is really, I mean, they were next to us where I slept with my neighbor. First of all, I had a neighbor. She was very hostile that she would even get a roommate. She was sometimes crying, sometimes singing, sometimes, I mean, really, people that my visitor that came to see me and see us, they were like, "Oh my God, she's really, you know, heavily, well, you know, I don't like the word crazy, but there's definitely something very wrong with her." And next to us, there was an isolation cell as well, where there was a guy for 48 hours. He was hammering on the on the wall. He was shouting. I mean, he was obviously, I think he was English, because it was all the time, fuck you, you know. I mean, it was really, sorry, the F word, but, you know, it was really, and he was shouting and hammering on the floor 48 hours non-stop. And he had just a de-isolation cell next to us. So it was absolutely horrible. And they started to medicate me immediately, you know. So I'm not used to take any medication, you know. So, and it was really, I wasn't myself anymore. I couldn't think clearly. And then the information had gone out that I was held there. And obviously I got a lot of calls because they had taken all of my things, my mobile phone, everything, you know, and they locked everything up. Already in Brockman they did this. So I had no...
So they took your rights away. You didn't commit any crimes. You didn't do anything wrong. And they held you in a cell. They took your personal belongings. You had no way to communicate. Yeah. You were in prison. You were in jail. You were being held. Okay.
Yeah, and my father had come to you know, from Germany to witness the birth. I mean, to see his new granddaughter. And he, by the way, he said that when they came and visited me, he said, it's like a prison here. And I said, well, Dad, it is a prison. And he was prevented from seeing his granddaughter as well. So my granddaughter was put in the neonatal unit, my child. So nobody could see her. I couldn't see my daughter. My father couldn't see his granddaughter. Nobody could approach the child. For 2 weeks, this was like this. And so they told me, well, you know, you obviously, like, you know, we want to hold you here for 40 days, because it's the maximum time you can hold a person in a psychiatric unit forcibly in Belgium. So and there will be a trial, so the judge will come here, the peace judge, and so we will ask for the 40 days. That you stay here, because we really would like to examine you and so on. And I had to take this medication. So, and then also Catherine and my father came a few times, and another friend, to see me. And then and there were a lot of phone calls, you know. People were wondering, because the information went on the internet, and so people were wondering what was going on with me and trying to reach me. Then they were complaining to me that I was getting too many phone calls here. And also the 3 days before
I'm sorry, let me interrupt. They had no idea really who they were messing with. Because as soon as, I mean, the day you had, the day you had, so you know, Melanie, the day you had the baby, Alfred and I were messaging. And then when they took the baby, Alfred messaged. And the first thing that happened was it went up on GoldFish Report internationally. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
It went everywhere. It was on Alfred's Inside Out. And we posted in Belgium on websites and blogs in Belgium. This went everywhere. They have to realize now that their racket, their predatory racket, is going to be exposed. There's no more, and I'm quoting Benjamin Fulford again, the new Gutenberg press, which is the internet, they can't control it. They're trying to with this whole stuff, but they didn't know who you were, and they made such a mistake, because I'm not surprised that they started getting all these phone calls, right, Alfred? If you put me and Alfred on something like this, you can forget it. We're going to get it out. I had this all over, said it to my friends and blogs, and I was just like, whoa, I just wanted you to know, because I don't know if you knew that, and I just wanted you to know that we wasted no time, right, Alfred?
Yeah, no, I could see this. I mean, the phones were ringing off the hook in that unit. And so they came, the nurses came, they all came to me and said, you know, you got to stop this, you know, we get too many phone calls, this is interrupting the service and disrupting and so on. I said, well, you know, news go very quickly on the internet. I can't stop that. You've even taken my phone, so, you know.
Right.
So they were like, okay, we'll give you your phone back. And I said, well, you know, in this psychiatric unit, there's no access to the internet anyway. You know, you're not allowed to have, you can, and I said, well, you know, I don't even have internet, but, you know, I have no means to stop this, you know, so, I mean, this is, you know.
You should have said you did it to yourself. You should have said you did it to yourself. You know, you didn't say that, but I mean,
I know,
you know,
that was basically the message, you know.
Exactly.
I said, well, I can't do anything about it. That's how it goes in the 21st century. News go quickly. I'm quite well known, so So, yeah. So this was obviously they didn't really like that. So I think 3 days before the trial, before the judge is actually coming for the hearing in the psychiatric unit. So this is it's like being in court, but it's all held in this unit. And so they said to me, well, actually I had only 3 people that came and visited me there, which was my father, Catherine, and another friend, Teresa. So, I wasn't like, they were running the unit down. But then the psychiatrist who took, who took care of me, she came to me and said, well, I have bad news for you. We have decided to revoke all your visiting rights because you get too many visitors and you get too many phone calls. So 3 days before the hearing, I could not have any visitors. But at the hearing, actually, my father was there, Catherine was there, Dr. Horton, because all that they helped me in psychiatry was basically based on the conversation she had with the midwife. And I'm in contact with the psychologist. She is more there, she knows my situation, but she was more there to help me a little bit with my family situation. And she had given me good advice, but she knows me very well. And she knows that I'm certainly not delusional. So I phoned her up, and you can ask the judge. I would suggest that these people come to my hearing. Do you agree? And the judge agreed. She said, okay for your father, okay for Dr. Horton, and okay for the psychologist. So, well, obviously, the other side, there were 2 psychiatrists there that didn't like that very much, but they couldn't say anything because the judge had authorized it. So, so the hearing went along, and the psychiatrist start off saying, well, this is a patient that was declared delusional by our colleagues, and so we have welcomed her here in this unit, and we would like to, examine the situation thoroughly. So we would like to ask for 40 days confinement here, so we can study her and so on, And the judge goes like, she's a good judge. She was listening to this, and she was like, okay, well, what's your diagnosis then? What about
you need a diagnosis.
Mental health issues? And they were like, no, there was nothing that could be diagnosed here or seen. So the eyes of the judge were like, what is this? Well, why are they asking for 40 days when they can't diagnose anything? And she asked, well, do you consider her dangerous to herself or to others? And they were like, no, we could not, establish that. So the judge was like, why are we asking for 40 days confinement when you could not diagnose any mental illness and you can't, couldn't establish that she was a danger to herself or any other one? And she looked at me and she said, madam, you're free to go.
Oh, hallelujah. Oh my God, hallelujah for that. What a moment. I mean, what battles. Unbelievable. This is so unbelievable. I can't.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. Why would they ask for 40 days when they can't, when I'm not a danger to myself or to others, and they can't see any psychological or psychiatric trouble, I mean, disorder. So, so that was it.
Whoa.
And
so then after that, you walked out clean and free in that courtroom that day, right?
Yeah, but my daughter was not.
Right, so your daughter was not. News. That's the next part, right?
So I said, well, I said, thank you to the judge. And then I said, well, where is my daughter? Right. Can I have my daughter? And then the psychiatrist says, well, these are 2 different procedures. So you are free to go, but another judge, the youth judge, has ordered your daughter to be placed here in the neonatal unit for 30 days without anybody being allowed to approach her. So my lawyer that I just met on the day, which for this procedure, she was commissioned. So that means she's doing it pro bono for this. Okay. But not for what's going on. I mean, how to say, afterwards, for the continuation of this. So I asked my lawyer, and she said, well, there is a you can counter this decision, you can, but it's going to take time and so on. So I asked, it was on a Wednesday, and on a Wednesday night you had the right to have 1 hour's visitors. So I said, well, now that I'm free tonight, can I have visitors? And they said, oh no, until we haven't received the court order really in writing, and that will only be tomorrow, the same rules applied. So tonight you have no right to have any visitors. So I said, okay, well, one more day in this madhouse, sorry, and it was really a madhouse, that will not kill me, so fine. Also, what I was very upset about is that they had taken my daughter from me, so I couldn't breastfeed her. They were giving her, and they're still giving her, artificial milk. And I had to go, I was given, because I was really insisting that I wanted to feed her, I got a machine, so to pump up your milk.
Yes.
And I had to go with this every 3 hours in the cabinet, in the toilet, not to disturb my neighbor. And also for 5 days, I didn't even have electricity on my side. So every 3 hours I had to get up and to pump up my milk, which was really, disturbing my neighbor. And all of this because I had to put the milk then away because they wouldn't even give it to my daughter. I asked if you can take this down to neonatal to feed her. Oh, no, we don't know what happened. You probably have to take heavy medication, so we can't give this to your daughter. So, but they had stopped the medication before because I had protested and my family protested. Right. And Catherine was also saying to them, you're drugging a healthy person, so that's agreed to stop the medication. So finally, when I went out, and I really, this was part of the harassment, I think. When I went out, they said, well, don't forget to come by to at the secretariat because we have to give you some papers for your release. So they gave me a prescription for a physiotherapist to massage the scar. That's fine. But then they also gave me a prescription of medication with a little bit of anti-anxiety drugs already in a little bag, a prescription, and it said big on it, no breastfeeding was this.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, so
you wouldn't have to have a reason to be with the baby. So since if you're not breastfeeding, then you wouldn't have to have a reason to be with the baby. But you're not obligated. You're not obligated to take medication, though.
So they gave this to me, and you said, well, this is your medication, this is your prescription for the next medication. Okay, and this is the prescription for the physiotherapist. So I looked at it, and I said to this secretary, I said, well, haven't a nurse was what I said, well, haven't you actually understood there's
no diagnosis.
The court order that was so there was no psychiatric illness that could be diagnosed with me, and I'm under no obligation of treatment. I am free. Okay. So she said, well, take this. I said, you can give it to me. And she also gave me a note with a new appointment with the psychiatrist. She said, this is when your doctor would like to see you. And I said, okay, you can give me the appointment and you can give me the medication, but I'm explaining to you that according to the hearing and the court's decision, I'm under no obligation, to your unit anymore, not to see the psychiatrist, not to take any medication. That was the court's order's decision. So thank you, but that's I'm no further obligation for any kind of psychiatric treatment. So thank you, bye bye. So I left, but the bad news is that my daughter is still held in this neonatal unit. The judge has authorized visiting rights now, so I go there every day, and it's really not next door. So it's almost a one hour's drive there, and to go there and come back every day to see my daughter, to be with her maximum of time. And so the first 30 days are already over, and at the moment it's only for me. So no other family member, nor my father, nor my son has the right to see her. And the judge has then renewed for another 30 days. So that means that my daughter is held there for 60 days. And their suggestion was that this has been placed in the hands of the youth aid. And there was one meeting, and they want that after the 60 days, when my daughter is held there, I go with her to a mother and child unit in a psychiatric hospital.
Okay, you know where this is going, right? I mean, Alfred, you know what this is where this is going, and we need the name of this facility. We need the name and phone number of this facility so viewers can call and oppose this, because this is absolute. This is so criminal. It's not even funny. I mean, I can't even. You know, they're trying to get that baby, and they're trying to break you. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's so disgusting. I'm so repulsed. I mean, I'm a mother, and I am, a really big advocate here. And I said, I've had personal experience with this, and I'm living through some of this as you're speaking, and not those details, but it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
What they're doing, and they're
So
doing
for any
it all
legal
over the place.
that I have now, and I have already had quite a lot, and I will still have quite a lot, because I mean, all of my evidence had to be translated into French, and of course the lawyers have quite big fees, and it's not pro bono anymore. So I would really appreciate if people could help me, via the GoFundMe page on the INACCURATE website that we can maybe post with this video.
Yeah, I'm going to have all the websites there, whatever information you have. She does have a GoFundMe page, Melanie, for the legal representation for baby Amethyst. Folks, if you're a human being out there, and if this is not pulled at your heartstrings yet, I don't know what will. This is just, you should never be separated from your baby ever. Nobody has the right to take that baby away from a mother. This is really an abuse. This is such an egregious abuse of predators. These are predators, you see. This is not serving the best interests of the baby. This was somebody who was preying on Melanie, and this was horrible. And so she needs help. She needs help with the defense, with her legal expenses. And we also need to put media pressure on this facility and compel them to let this go and stop doing this, because the internet and the media, see, mainstream media has been completely co-opted and controlled, but social media is not. And so what we have to do just collectively as humans is stand up for ourselves. And if we don't, then whatever, you really have to fight for your own rights. And that's what we're trying to do. And so we're going to put the information in the description section of this video. Please help Melanie if you can. We're going to have that link in there. And also we're going to have, if you want to write, you don't have to be vulgar. You don't have to be screaming. You don't have to lose control, but you can call and voice your opinion, because this is an abuse. This is clearly an abuse, and I'm going to ask Alfred to really, I mean, this is so egregious, Alfred. There's so many incredible, this is like a conspiracy, really, a predatory conspiracy. As you were saying, it's a racket. This is just on a legal sense. And you said you had a document that you wanted to read. Let me just, before I go to Alfred, can you just wrap up the where you're at right now? How much are you, so this is where it's left off. They're asking for another 30 days, and you're able to go every day to spend maximum amount of time with the baby, and which is obviously not enough. This is so traumatizing, and to separate the baby and the mother, and we don't even know what kind of care she's getting there, what kind of vaccines she could be getting. I mean, this is against your will. You're not probably authorizing this, but Alfred, talk to us about how egregious this is. What about human rights violations? What about the rights of the baby? And what's that statement that you wanted to read?
Yeah, if I could, because this is to this is the statement from the Ambassador and Minister of Child Rights of a global nation, and the nation yet does not want to be named. However, they have been asked by NTV Polish National Television and EWA TV, which is like the progressive Polish TV station, to be interviewed. So those negotiations are ongoing now, where the minister may appear on that and may be continuing at The Hague in the discussions around bringing back the rights of the child and the rights of the biological parents into the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child. So I can read from that. I don't know how much more time we have, though.
We have probably about 15 minutes. Is that enough time, or is?
Yeah. So why don't I just read a couple of paragraphs, okay?
Sure.
And so this is quotations from the Minister and Ambassador of Child Rights of a Nation. It is my opinion that the rights of a child are primary in consideration of the family structure. A child is the most vulnerable person as per their lack of experience, lack of physical and mental development, lack of skill sets for survival, and lack of ability to function independently. The following is a position of the two primary rights of a child at the international level for a proposed invention for The Hague. The term family is defined as a natural or biological mother and father and child. The structure exists whether the three are living together or apart. In the following written proposal, the term parent is defined as a natural or biological parent to a child. The primary right of a child is the right to be raised by their parents. Whether this right is deemed beyond a reasonable doubt not to be possible to honor due to imminent threat of mental or physical harm from a parent, the child is provided with the right to have as close of a relationship as possible with full continuity with that parent, with the minimal intrusion as possible, to ensure that there is no possibility of mental or physical harm. And so then this starts to get very, very complicated, but there is a crisis in the current Western world that appears to be orchestrated from the child welfare systems. Child welfare and protection systems are operating in a manner as to recognize one right of a child to be honored in rare circumstance. This circumstance is one in which it is deemed by professional certifying persons beyond a reasonable doubt that a parent poses an imminent threat of physical or mental harm to a degree that no contact can be safely implemented with all resources to include professional supervision. While this situation is a real possibility, it is rare as per the natural instincts of a parent, which are to protect, elicit development, and nurture their child. Global research clearly shows it is not possible to replicate or synthesize the pure protection, elicitation of development and nurturing from a parent. My research shows that child protection services do not deliver any other service than separation of children from a parent. There are no services available for honoring any other rights of the child. My research shows that psychological manipulation techniques are being applied to employees of the child agencies to believe that parents pose the only danger to children and that this danger is at a voluminous level. My research shows that psychological manipulation techniques are being applied to foster, quote, parents that romanticizes the concept of acquiring a child into their care and compares the foreign foster parent waiting for notification that a child has been apprehended by the state to the romantic time of being a pregnant mother. My research shows that psychological manipulation techniques are being applied to the public to believe that parents pose the most prominent threat of physical and mental harm, and to understand that parents belong to the state. My research shows that psychological manipulation techniques are being deployed on parents that cause parents to question their identities as parents and abilities as competent and safe persons. Such tactics include, but are not limited to, psychological terror, torture, gaslighting, segregation, and deprivation. My research shows that psychological manipulation techniques are being deployed on children in state foster care custody that include, but are not limited to, induction of Stockholm Syndrome and belief of abandonment from parents, as well as medication enforcement to subdue children to conformity and compliance. So I would say that along with that, in my judgment as a lawyer and as a graduate psychotherapist, that Melanie was subject to those, in that she was set up for transfer to a CIA-like rendition center where she was subjected to false diagnosis that in any nation that I know would subject all of those psychiatrists to decertification because they issued false diagnoses in writing that would result in immediate decertification in any proceeding, in any medical certification proceeding with integrity, number one, and that she was subjected to the attempted MK Ultra type deconditioning, to the attempted MK Ultra right conditioning and other things to try and break the mother, and that because Melanie has an exceptionally powerful ego structure and self and sense of self and soul, she has come through this with flying colors. And so I would say that there's an old adage, you do not break the law, you break yourselves against the law. And you are entirely correct, Louisa, that this operating unit of the criminal kidnap organization that attempted this kidnap of baby Amethyst, which will not succeed, broke itself against the law. And we are now witnessing, and they are witnessing the pieces, and they had best comply with the law and immediately release baby Amethyst. Thank you.
Alfred, thank you very much for that and weighing in on this issue, which has been, close to you for a long time. And, who could have ever seen this turn of events, foreseen that rather. Melanie, thank you so much for coming on. And again, I have to tell you, I'm very mixed at this because I know, as I said, I have firsthand personal knowledge, which I've never discussed on GoldFish Report, about these kinds of things that you're talking about. So as a mother, I deeply know and feel your pain, but I have to tell you what an amazingly strong woman you are, because this would have broken most other women. It really would have, like you're saying, Alfred, it's designed to do that. And there's times when the wounds, I should say emotional wounds, sometimes take a very long time to heal from these things. And I appreciate and love your compassion and conviction, Alfred, for suggesting and that this is not going to succeed, that they need to let the baby go. But the problem is, in commerce, we know that unless we declare ourselves human, unless we declare the ownership of our bodies, unless we take control of that birth certificate, the state owns us, the state has control over us. That's how they get away with doing this. So you said in the testimony, the state controls, the state controls the parent under parens patriae. We've been hoodwinked. There's no question we've been hoodwinked. The law, they have used the law to manipulate us in a way that's unnatural. We're not vessels. I'm not sailing on the open sea. We shouldn't be under admiralty law. Therefore, we shouldn't be considered commerce. But there's reasons. There were, I think, as my great other co-host Winston Shrout has pointed out many times, it was intended to facilitate commerce, but it was not intended to be abused, and that was what ended up happening. So the intentions of this were good initially, but it was adulterated. It was abused, I should just say. So they use color of law now to abuse and take anybody. But the thing to do is to realize that how they're getting away with doing this is through this like loophole in the law. And there's other remedies. Well, I'm not going to talk about it on the video, but there's other approaches you could take to try to remedy this situation, and I'm sure you're going to get some good advice on that. So I just wanted to thank you, and I know you're a strong woman. I know we're all going to help you now, Melanie. We're all on your side here. You're going to have people. This is going to go all over the world, this video. And I know Alfred's going to publish it. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to have my network of blogger friends publish it. It's going to go everywhere. And it has to raise the attention. And because you're so strong, we know you're going to get through this. And it's not going to change what's happened. But I mean, Alfred, you've pointed it out many times how strong Melanie is. And you know her very well. And this is one tough cookie. Let me tell you, they messed with the wrong mom. They messed with the wrong woman. And you know, clearly don't seem delusional to me. And quite coherent and very capable of going through the chronology of events and situation. So I am with you 100%, and I know Alfred is as well, and I know whatever we can do to be of assistance, we will do that. And by all means, remember to give me all those links, because we need to stop this. We need to stop the predatory manipulation and taking of our children. This has to stop. So we appeal to all of our viewers to feel in your heart what the story that Melanie has shared with you tonight, and do what you can to help her if you can. We're going to have the link in there. And let me just ask Alfred, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to say?
Well, I'm really just grateful that people around the world have really awoken here and are beginning to come in and not let this happen. And we this is happening to Melanie and to baby Amethyst, and it's happening in hospitals around the world. In hospitals around the world, it's happening in families around the world, where and it's happening where the foster parent industry are grooming people because they're profiting over this. And we have to end these illegal treaties with these predatory races. We have to close down this industry that it is just predatory on the human children. We just have to do it and stop it. And that's it. It's enough. Enough. Just stop it. I
agree with you. Thank you so much, Alfred. I can feel those. I can feel that right through my heart, actually. It has to end. Stop preying on our children. Melanie, I want to give you the last comment here.
Well, thank you very much for having me on and for spreading this news. And well, I just hope that people will respond and help me to get my daughter back, and because she's really great, and I hope to be able to come on when I come on next time too.
I hope so, and I hope you could show us a picture. You hope you could show us a picture of her too.
Yeah. Okay.
Next time when you come back on.
Yeah.
All right, Melanie. Well, at least you're not in this alone, and we're going to get the word out. And folks, we have to put a stop to this now. We can't allow as Alfred said so eloquently, these are predators. So we can, you know, you have to understand that they're predators. And when you do understand that, then you realize we have to unite. And that's the only way we're going to fight and really survive. Or, I heard a report today that 300,000 children disappear just from the United States every year. So this child trafficking is so huge. How do you think they're getting the children? So this is this is extremely predatory. This is illegal, it's criminal, and we need to stop the manipulation through the legal loopholes, and there's ways to do that. So thank you both very much for joining me tonight. This was very important. I hope that the viewers can spread this, and as you know, there's a lot of censorship on YouTube, especially with subjects like this, on Facebook. And I'm not going to be surprised if we have some distribution issues, but I know our viewers, and I know that if you have a grandchild or a child and you love them and you feel that love in your heart, that you're going to do what you can to spread this video and spread this information, and realize that we are more powerful than they are. We are more powerful than they are when we are united, and only when we're united. So having said that, thank you all for joining us. We're going to have all this information in the description section. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.